Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll commence in just a minute or two. We'll just give everyone a minute to join the call, and then we'll begin. All right, I can see we've got a few people on the call now. We're very glad you could all join us. For those that don't know me, my name's Zach Greening, and I'm the director of the Net Zero Carbon Division. Some quick housekeeping before we commence. The session is being recorded, so you'll be able to revisit the content or share it with colleagues afterwards. We'll send out a link to all attendees. Please also note that the Q&A function will be active throughout the session. So as questions come to you during the presentation, feel free to drop them into the Q&A chat, and we'll address them towards the end once we begin the Q&A component. As many of you know, GreenStar Performance version 2 represents the most significant update to the Green Building Council of Australia's performance rating tool in over a decade. It sharpens the focus on net zero, resilience, and tenant well-being, while streamlining pathways for real estate portfolios to demonstrate genuine leadership. To guide us through what has changed, why it matters, and how you can position your assets for success, I'm delighted to introduce our presenter, Michelle Tomskard. Michelle is a GreenStar accredited professional with extensive hands-on experience in applying the GreenStar performance framework in practice. With a background in mechanical engineering and a master's in sustainable energy engineering, Michelle combines technical depth with a really strong career focus on performance ratings. In that kind of realm as well, she's also a NABERS and CBD accredited assessor, giving her a really unique perspective on how to align NABERS and GreenStar pathways for maximum client value. So today, Michelle will be sharing insights on the key updates in version 2, some practical strategies for maximizing your performance, and telling us how leading property groups can approach the transition. So Michelle, without further ado, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Zach. That was a lovely introduction. Never heard that many words about me before. That's great. Thank you. Let's dive straight into it. So welcome to Navigating GreenStar Performance version 2, your basic and essential guide. I will go through the essentials and I will give you tips and tricks on how best to transfer into the new tool. So let's move on. So the key updates were started on 31st July 2024 when the first change occurred. And as of 1st of January 2026, all projects has to be registered and certified under version 2. That means that currently we can still use version 1.2 for existing projects already being certified in the year 1, year 2, etc. updates, pending approval from GBC, obviously, but that will end very shortly. And I would say not a lot of projects will be able to do it if they start now to do updates to the existing GreenStar ratings. So how is this now evolving? So we have this amazing new tool that is evolved from being a quite technical and document heavy tool into an outcome focused and future ready framework. So I think it's amazing how it's now reflecting today's sustainability priorities rather than, we being stuck with admin, which it sometimes can feel like. And now the big great update is that we now have, instead of 9 categories, there are 8. And there's a notable change here. So when we talk about the changes, there's a big one, first of all, with innovation category that is now called leadership. This is now recognizing organizations that go beyond compliance and drive genuine transformation across industry. I find it interesting also that there's no more sector-specific credits we can use and target, which is a great new update, and more projects and more portfolios can target the GreenStar rating and actually be benchmarked accordingly, in my opinion. The other thing I would say is we have new credits that I'm quite excited to use and started already using. For example, resilience, nature, and people. And the other one we should think about is resilience, what that means. It would be more heavy and emphasized on climate adaptation and emergency preparedness, which is aligned with what we can see in the future coming as more and more prominent. These 8 categories also have 37 credits. So this 37 credits then is made up of 110 available points that will account for your star rating in the end. These are called the core rating tool, and we will talk a little bit more about them later. So overall, we can see this new tool also being better aligned with GreenStar framework, so international ESG frameworks. We have the UN Sustainable Development Goals and Australian Net Zero Pathway. And another major shift, I would say, this is probably one that probably everyone is going to start done at GreenStar rating before will think, wow, what is this? So instead of doing 3-year cycles, we're doing 1-year certification cycles. So every year you're going to have to update your rating to have a certification. So before we might just have updated energy and water, or at least energy, but now every year we're going to update the certification to maintain it. So this shift encourages a continuous improvement, ensures rating always reflects real and current operational performance. So in short, version 2 unites environment, social, governance outcomes in a single simplified framework and helping organizations move from measuring sustainability to leading it. Let's go to the next slide. So a few other key updates, and one of the biggest one is we now focus on the real performance outcomes, as a little bit said before. The tool now places strong emphasis on portfolio submissions and introduces climate positive pathways. These are designed to help organizations set measurable science-aligned targets, which would be then consistent with the latest IPCC recommendations. So previously version 1 was designed for a single office building rather than portfolio. So the new methodology is amazing at targeting this portfolio ratings and different sectors. And I'm super excited to see what will come if we're going to have more hospitals or more, individual buildings that doesn't really fit the old rules. So all of these are now extremely exciting to see what will happen in the future. So what does this mean in practical terms, do you reckon? So it means your sustainability goals are now more strategic. They will be more comparable and globally relevant. It is not just meeting local compliances, but it also will align with international climate action targets. So the process itself will be more streamlined. As I mentioned, less admin, less documentation. We can now work on actually improving the buildings and the policies and the processes. So many credits might not just have a lot of documentation. We can submit sample documentation for portfolios rather than for all assets, which would be in the guidelines, which we can do. There would be more flexibility around what will be updated year on and year out. So we might not have to update all policies every year. It might just be when there's been a change or something has changed that we are not 100% sure about is the same, or if the building has a fit out, etc. So these are kind of major changes, and I think they are a great start to start thinking about what we need to do to prepare for the version 2. And then we'll go on to the key points of submission. This hasn't really changed that much a bit, but I will talk about the general submission and how I like to plan our projects that we do in-house and at Zero. So I always like to pre-register 2 to 3 weeks before. The whole process is nearly like a 12 months planning phase, I would say, but 6 to 8 months since you started to register a project. There's always good to start the conversation early, because as you know, there's a lot of document heavy stuff to go through, even though the version 2 is more streamlined. If you have, say, 20 buildings, there's a lot of data if you want to achieve a good star rating. So pre-registration is good to start the conversation, ensure roles, meetings, and so on and so forth. And then we go to registering your star project. So you can do that online. So either I can do that or you can do that, whatever is the easiest. And that can take 2 to 3 weeks, depending on eligibility criteria meeting. Have you met the minimum requirements? Are you a single building dwelling, or do you have any technical question you need to ask to ensure you're meeting the right conditions to be part of a GreenStar rating? Then we engage with the GBCA. We start a process. We start looking at what credits can we target, what documentation do we need. The back and forth will go. I will be there to support and drive and also review any documentation. And after 4 to 6 months, generally, we'll do the submission, which doesn't take very long to submit, but you have to have a tidy presentation. And then it takes about, I would say, 12 weeks to get the round one back. So a round one is when you get your results back. And we always strive to have this perfect, but you can't always plan for perfect. So worst case scenario, if the independent assessor that will assess your project at GBCA says, oh, I didn't really get this, or you're missing this, or I find that you might have to do a technical question because you're not really meeting the minimum requirements in the credit intent, then you can submit this in a round 2. And the round 2 will be assessed, and then you get your certification. So it sounds pretty long, and it is a long process, but planning is key for having a good project phase and outcome. We'll move on to performance period. So I'm not sure if anyone here is very familiar, but version 1.2 had something called performance period. So performance period was the 12 months of data that we assessed for the rating. It's kind of like thinking the neighbors rating. Neighbors has 12 months of data being assessed for energy and water. So now with version 2, we previously called the performance period, we need to call data period or annual certification cycle, so the annual certification period. So what that means is that we, in initial submission, the first time you submit the version 2, so you will have to determine the 12 months of data, and it can't be too old. It can't be that you have your neighbors rating just being expiring. It has to have certain criteria to meet. So generally saying 3 months valid neighbors rating, if you look at the energy and water data. And then every year when you resubmit your certification, that has to follow. So you can't have a gap between the 2 certifications. So if it's calendar year you submit, it is calendar year you will submit the year 2. It will be an ongoing continuous improvement of the assessment. So do you want to see the data being improved continuously? Well, the good news here is, generally speaking, the data is the credit for energy and water is that's going to be 12 months continuous. Policy credits, such as you have management plans, waste management plans, or anything else that is a policy or procedure, they have different credit criteria this time. And this is exciting news because we can develop your policies, we can make these procedures, and they just have to be active or in use by the time you submit, or within a few months, depending on the credit intent or requirements. So this is exciting news, and I am loving the fact that we can actually create this together while we are planning ahead with the project rather than just getting it to the end of the 12 months of data period and finding out that we don't have the policies implemented on site. So these are the things that we can help with to make sure that you get a good streamlined certification and also extra points. So as I said, planning is key. So we need to ensure that we have everything by the date and have it all tidy up so the assessor can easily understand what we have done and trying to target the intent with our credit submission. So we'll move on to some more credit specific items here now. So the difference here with version 1 and version 1.2 and version 2 is not that big, but it is important to understand it. There's always been policy credits and action credits. Now we also have credits that are annual progress reports. We have attribute, data, plan and process. Each of these build up the credits, so you can have a variation of these, and then you need to meet these requirements to achieve the points. So generally, these are policy and action credits I will talk about during the presentations. They're 2 sides of the same sustainability coin. No one is better than the other, it's just different. The good thing here that GBCA have done with the version 2 is we have policy credits together with action credits. So these are great examples on how you have to improve to make sure each building has what is needed to gain the credits. So that could be you have to have an environmental management plan, but then you also have to measure the indoor air quality, for example, to ensure that the plan is actually meeting the data on site. So policy credits represent organizations' formal commitments. As I said, it could be sustainability policies, which is where you have your ESGs, or the waste management strategies, or the energy management plans. So these establish intent and direction, and while they require upfront management engagement and documentation, they are relatively straightforward and are quite easy we can engage and create if needed. Then we have the action credits, which I was saying is like your energy, your waste, your water data. These are more focused on delivery tangible, repeatable steps, such as when you do the continuous cycle. This has to be updated each year to maintain your certification. This achieve the action credits often requires a little bit more time and coordination, I would say. So here it's even more important that we plan ahead, but they're very impactful. You can get a lot of more points with them, and they are great to show that you actually do what you set out in your methodology, in your policy, and in your processes. So now let's talk about some of my favorite things. What is the best way to start your GreenStar rating? So version 1.2 was always like, you have to have the energy data and the water data should be included. And, there was a lot of things that must and mustn't be done. I find it version 2 is more flexible in the sense of, can I get a rating? And I will say yes, as long as you meet the minimum eligibility criteria, with some caveats, of course. But first thing I would do is just register and meet the minimum credit criteria, which is 1 point at some point in the guidelines. And then we'll look at the energy data, because if your building has monitoring systems or you have your utility bills or you can get them, that is an easy one to try to target. Or if you have a neighbor's rating, that is even better. Then you can target those credits and achieve quite some points if your building do perform quite well. Same with water. Still pretty easy to get the sufficient billing you need for that. Other credits I would go for, depending on what you are trying to target, of course, because different star rating levels will need different types of credits to meet their minimum requirements. But indoor environment is always a great focus, not just because you do the testing, you get the results, it's easy to compare with, and you can use the neighbor's pathway, but it's also because you show your tenants that you care, which I think is a great way to achieve and maintain them also within your buildings. If you are an office building, a retail shop, I always hear when I go to site, because I do a lot of these assessments, oh, are you coming? I love it. It's so good. What are you doing? And they always ask questions, sometimes weird questions, like if you are from Google and going to steal their secrets, but sometimes it's also they just appreciate you so much. So that's good just to do in general, I feel. Another big change with the credits that is worth mentioning is that now, instead of having just the credit from version 1.2, we also have different levels within the credit. So that means it's the credit achievements is the minimum standard to meet. So it's the first thing you do with each and every credit. Then you have high performance, where you exceed those standards and you can get additional points. And then exceptional performance is just demonstrating sector leading outcomes, which is even more points if we can meet those. And as an example, as I spoke about indoor environment, we can talk about the clean air credit. So for example, with the clean air credit, the credit achievement is you just have to have targets and inspection of the HVAC system set regularly to achieve the simple CA, so the credit achievement level. To then get high performance, you need to monitor carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. And then for exceptional performance, we're adding the PM10 and other pollutants from sources to measure those. Of course, this is just a basic view of this credit. There's more to it, but just to show you the different levels, and you can meet different and work on different of these to achieve more points. This approach rewards continuous improvement and gives team a clear roadmap, I feel, and just working towards something rather than just trying to maintain or achieve the first step is a great new GreenStar version 2 update, I find. Another thing I would need to tell you is that for the energy and water credits, we always say use the neighbor's pathway because it's the first step, and it is still the same way here, but Now, when you've done your first rating, your initial GreenStar performance rating, if you don't use the neighbors pathway, you have to justify that with a technical question. But in the next 3 years, we're going to have to move over to using the neighbors pathway, unless there's a technical question, of course, being approved that says you don't need it. But this is just any sector that has an available neighbors rating. So for example, logistic has for energy, but not for water. In the next 3 years, you're going to have to use that tool to submit GreenStar with a neighbors rating. It can be a bit daunting, but they have it because it makes it easier to assess and benchmark multiple buildings that has already gone through the neighbors rating assessment pathway. You probably heard me talk about technical questions a lot, and let's just then go over that also. So a technical question is a formal way to seek clarification direct from GBCA. So, these questions are used when we need guidance from the GBCA team to interpret different credits, or if we want to propose an alternative compliance pathway. So, for example, if you have a building that doesn't really meet the pathways A to E in version 2 for energy benchmarking, we can provide a compliant different pathway and justify that and potentially get that approved. All of these technical questions cost around 220. You do get some with the project usually for free, but it also takes 5 to 10 business days. So depending on the complexity, it can be a bit timely. So you have to make sure you do them on time. And it's important that you are formal with them and make sure you are accurate and compliant and aligned with the GreenStar rule guidelines and explaining your case so you can easily get it approved. But I find it GBCA is very helpful, and you are assigned a kind of project coordinator with GBCA who helps you navigate this, and I think they are great at what they do. So it makes it quite easy. So one of the next big changes is about Australia has set an ambitious target, but GBCA has set even a more ambitious target a full decade earlier. So Australia has set that all buildings become climate positive by 2050, but GBCA wants it by 2040. So first of all, what does this mean? So you can see the blue, if it's not too small, the blue represents the carbon neutrality, while the yellow is climate positive. So carbon neutral means a building has reduced and offset all its operational emissions to achieve net zero impact. But then you have the climate positive, which goes a step further. And here, it's generating environmental benefits by preventing or removing more emissions than it produces. So in this case, what does it mean for a GreenStar rating? So year on year out, the guidelines says that we have to get more stringent and you have to do better to achieve the credits and the points and the star ratings. So for example, to achieve a 2-star rating today, buildings must have a zero carbon action plan in place and meet the minimum points. That's all, which is great. But then if you look at into the future, by 2040, the building also has to be climate positive to achieve that. So you see how much harder it will come year on year out, and you need to start planning and strategically improving your buildings to be future-proofed. I find that these accelerated timelines reflect the leadership roles that expected of GreenStar buildings to drive real-world environment outcomes and help Australian government achieve their outcomes too. So I really want to underscore that achieving climate positive means buildings are not only reducing emissions, but actively contributing to net environment benefit. So this can be you electrify in your building. So instead of using gas, you electrify and you're using 100% renewable electricity, or you're looking at policy credits and get points for those, circular procurement, responsible material use, etc. There's several credits in the tool that can be applied to for different building types and what you find the most applicable to your buildings. So for building owners and operators, this underscores importance, as I said before, proactive planning. I know I'm going to stop saying that soon. Ongoing performance tracking, continuous improvement, and each year certification will have to meet the next credit. So I would strongly suggest that you look 10 years or 5 years even in the future and seeing, is this something my building can achieve if I maintain my 4-star that I currently have with, say, version 2 initial submission? Okay, so now let's discuss who is responsible for what and some common challenges that I find when we do our submissions here at Net Zero. So even though this tool is more streamlined, it will take a lot of time, and it will take a lot of time from everyone. So let's start with me as an assessor. What is my role? So I'm here to support, I'm here to guide you, I'm here to interpret credits, be the pathway between GBCA and yourself. I'm here to submit the rating. I'm here to help you ensure you get the star rating you want or achieve it by the time, say, we set as a target. Then we have the site teams or the managers or the owners, so the FMPMs, etc. You're responsible for providing data, implement these procedures that we talk about, manage site activities. There will be a lot of different documents that we do need from you guys, so there will be a lot of back and forward, but that's normal. And then we have contractors, which could be your waste management team or indoor air quality testing staff who specializes in different credit achievements. If it's doing your neighbor's energy rating and water, or if it's doing indoor air quality testing, these needs to be in accordance with the guidelines, so the GreenStar Performance Guidelines version 2. And they also need to be knowledgeable doing it correct, because if I get a report that is incorrect, I can't use it, and you lose a whole point or even more points now. We do tend to like to do this in-house in Net Zero, so I have control, or our team have control, and anyone who knows me, they know I like to have control over things to make sure it's done correctly, and here at Net Zero everyone is amazing at it. So we like to do the indoor air quality testing just to help with the GreenStar ratings, which is one of the things that could fall short, be a challenge if it's not done correctly. And of course, we have GBCA, who provides us with the project coordinators to help us with the process, the certification. They have the independent auditor who assess the project. All of these things are great. Everyone has their own roles, and it's important that they follow the roles. So some other challenges are, for example, the data. I always suggest give the data early because they might not be correct. Give sample data so we don't get a lot of documents and I have to read about 10,000 pages of the same thing. Sample documents uploaded to a SharePoint, for example, is the best thing to keep track of stuff. And trackers. I love trackers. I love tracking documents and pages and who's responsible with deadlines. So I have heaps of these set up for our team, for our site FM and PMs to make sure we are all on the same page. Because as planning is the most important thing I find, and consistent given the data to us, that's the key to meet our deadlines set. Because another thing with GBCA is also their deadlines to get an assessor to assess the project can be delayed if it's using it too late. They will get it too late and then your deadlines won't be met either. So it's really important to adhere to those. So benefits of doing a GreenStar, you think? Why would you spend all this time and all this pain of getting the data together? I think you should have the data together already. You should have it all saved good in your system. So I think it should be easy enough, hopefully, or we can set it up to be easy enough going forward, because if you've done it once, it's pretty good and easy to do it twice. So a GreenStar performance assessment is more than certification. It's a reflection of operation excellency. And I think GPC has done this new tool great to show this. It demonstrates that building performs efficiently, manages resources responsibly, and provides healthy, comfortable space for occupants. So how can you then see the difference? How can you then tangibly understand there's a difference using the tool? Well, it will help you lower operational costs because every year you have to meet the minimum standards, which is great. You save water, you save on energy. You have happier tenants because you might be doing the indoor environment assessments. Or, as I know when we moved to our new office a few years ago, we had an amazing end-of-trip facility, and I pushed back to work every day. So when I got this new amazing, showers and towels, my life went up 10,000%, and I'm so much more happier now than I was before. So I'm a really happy tenant. So for organization managing multiple buildings, portfolio submission will now be very consistent and efficient. It's easy benchmarking these ratings also. So ultimately, GreenStar Performance version 2 is about continuing improvement, and it will help you maintain your performance, and every year you will do better and better, and that will show. So what do we get in the end of this whole process? When we spend all that time, we get a 12-month certification of either a 0, mostly 1-star to 6-star rating. So different star level, as I said, will have different points associated with them. So you have, for example, a 5-star rating will have 50 points, and you have to meet the minimum credit requirements to reach a 5-star too. So after you run 1 and 1, 2 process, you get this rating. And if you submit a portfolio, each building within that portfolio will have its own star rating. But then you also will have a rating for your whole portfolio, which is based on the average and the area for the buildings included in the assessment. So to clarify this, you get the star rating for your portfolio and the star ratings for your assets, which is great to show that you are either, as shown here, 4-star best practice, or it could be a 6-star world leader. So this will now recognize your building's operation excellency and commit to ongoing improvement doing these ratings. So to summarize, a GreenStar Performance version 2 certificate rating is valid for 12 months. It requires annual registration and submission to maintain the rating. This annual certification cycle allows project to continuously track and improve the building's operational performance. And GreenStar Performance isn't just a certification, it's a framework for continuous improvement. And I like to think about it like this. It drives real environment, social, economic benefit for your assets, but it's also a living system that helps measure and manage and enhance performance year after year. So by embracing it as an ongoing journey, you're not only achieving certification, but you're also future-proofing your assets. And isn't that excellent? Is that what we all want? So by saying that, I will thank you all for joining, and I'll give it over to Zach.
Thanks, Michelle. Really informative session. I think it's super interesting that the GreenStar Performance rating tool is becoming more holistic and focusing on human wellness as well as sustainable performance of properties and portfolios. In recent years, we've pretty much doubled our nationally determined commitment to reduce emissions by 2035 to over 60%. So having tools like this that support emissions intense sectors like the built environment will be really crucial for securing Australia's emissions reduction targets. We'll open the floor up now for a Q&A. If you do have any questions, feel free to click the raise hand icon and we'll unmute you and you can ask your questions over your mic. Otherwise, you can pop them into the Q&A chat using that function at the top of your screen there. While we wait for some questions to come through, I might start off with one or two for you, Michelle. You mentioned a net zero carbon action plan as part of the submission. Who can or should be writing that action plan if there's not already one in place? And should that plan be based on building specific goals or broader company or portfolio goals?
Oh, thanks, Max. That's a great question. And I should say that anyone can write it, but it's about implementing it also on a site level, portfolio level, or company level. You need to show your targets and goal for the net zero pathway. So we can help with that, for example, here in Net Zero. We can write it for you, but then you need to sign it off. You need to implement it, publicly release it as part of your strategy to improve year on year out with the GreenStar Performance tool.
Brilliant, thank you. I have a question here in the Q&A from Georgina. Are there any credits so far under version 2 that you have seen take a long time to start implementing?
Oh, that is a very good question. This, as you all saw, there was a lot of credits, 37. But yes, there is a few, I would say. I think the ones with the data driven is the most important ones. So we have the air quality ones or the thermal comfort ones, acoustics, lighting, all these credits that are pretty data driven and you need to plan for. Some of them are either yearly or you have to do the testing twice a year now. That can also be getting around with a technical question if you have valid reason why you can't or why it wouldn't be beneficial to do it twice a year. But as I said, those are very intense because of the testing itself.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Jordan. How does scoring compare to the previous version?
So scoring compared to the previous tool, so with version 1.2, minimum requirements were very different. So for submission, the energy credit had to be done, and there's different levels of achievements to reach that star level. Like the point system are different also compared to version 2, number of points you need to achieve different star levels. But version 2 is more stringent in the sense of you need to have the net zero action plan, for example, in place to get a star, 1 star. So 2 stars, you need to look at maybe your energy data, and then you have the 3, 4 star. Now you need to look at your waste data and have minimum of a good score there. So the difference is much harder and much more credit relevant credits you need for each star level, if that makes sense.
Awesome, thank you. For energy data sets, you mentioned 12 months of data. Is sub-metering data also needed?
Well, depends. So if you step back a bit, so if you're talking about the energy data in this case, first we look at, do you have a neighbors rating? Is there a valid eligible neighbors rating for your building type? Can you do it or not? So if you can't, we're looking at the neighbors rating, the next pathway, which would be data. And here you can use submeter data to cover your buildings or utility bills, or a combination of the two. And obviously we're looking at, if you have exclusions, stuff that energy that shouldn't be included in your rating, that will be using submetering data. So to summarize that, you can use submetering data to cover your base building energy, if that's a base building rating we're looking at doing, but you can also use bills or a combination of the two.
Awesome. If there is a neighbours rating available, is there any conflict with having the same assessor conducting your neighbours rating plus the GreenStar performance submission?
No, I wouldn't say so, because we all, as assessor, uphold to the highest of standards, at least either by yourself or the organ that actually monitors it. So no.
Brilliant. Last chance to get any questions in the Q&A. Otherwise, we might start wrapping things up. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We hope you found it an informative session. We will send out a wrap-up email with a link to the recorded presentation for you to share to your colleagues or to go back and rewatch any sections that were particularly relevant to your organisation. I don't think we have any more questions coming through. So please join me in thanking Michelle, and we wish you all an enjoyable rest of your day.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.